And your wedding tiara? Should it be packed? The quiet, reverent question echoed in the cavernous silence of rooms being hastily stripped of their former grandeur. The air smelled of rain, of fear, and of the end of an era. The deposed Empress Eugénie, the last Empress of France, lifted her tear-stained eyes, which still reflected the gleam of 1,000 palace candles, and answered with bitterness, "No, it was never truly mine." She was taking her personal jewels with her into exile, testaments of love and memory. But this one, the most iconic, the most beloved, the pearl tiara, a wedding gift from her groom, had to stay. It belonged not to the woman, but to the crown, a crown that had so mercilessly tumbled from her husband's head. But to understand the depth of this loss, we must return to the day she first saw this treasure, the day her destiny was forever bound to that of the Second French Empire. Eugénie de Montijo, a Spanish countess of dazzling beauty whose grace and bearing captivated the courts of Europe, had long resisted the advances of Louis Napoleon Bonaparte. He was not a king by birthright. He was an adventurer, the nephew of the great Corsican, a president of the Republic who, after a coup, had declared himself Emperor Napoleon III. His throne was precarious, his legitimacy contested, and marriage to a renowned beauty from an ancient, albeit non-royal lineage, was less a union of hearts than a crucial political move. Eugénie, in turn, felt no love for him, but refusing a man who held the fate of France in his hands was all but impossible. And so she consented, accepting her role with dignity and cold resolve. And the wedding gift in 1853 had to eclipse everything France had ever seen before. It was meant to be a declaration of the power, wealth, and taste of the new empire, one destined to revive the glory of the first. When Eugénie lifted the lid of the massive velvet case, signed with the name of the celebrated jeweler Alexandre Gabriel Lemonnier, it took her breath away. Inside, nestled on a bed of cream-colored silk, rested an entire universe of pearls. A grand necklace of 6 cascading strands of the finest pearls, 2 symmetrical bracelets echoing its motif, and a monumental stomacher, at the center of which shone the legendary pear-shaped pearl, La Régente, the Regent, weighing 75.6 carats, one of the most famous pearls in the world. But the crown of this splendor, its very soul and symbol, was the tiara. It was not merely a piece of jewelry, but a work of architecture, an ode to Eugénie's own classical beauty. Lemonnier had created a masterpiece in the Neo-Grecian style that perfectly harmonized with her flawless features. 12 elegant arches, studded with old mine-cut diamonds, formed a kind of classical portico. Each arch was topped by a large, perfectly round pearl, like a frozen drop of moonlight. Between them, like splashes from a frozen fountain, flared diamond volutes and palmettes, while the base of the tiara was a solid river of nearly 2,000 diamonds. In total, its creation required 212 pearls of impeccable quality and almost 2,000 diamonds. It was the embodiment of imperial grandeur, cold, majestic, and undeniable. However, Lemonnier's genius lay not only in creating a new form, but also in his ability to breathe life into old, legendary stones. Napoleon III, eager to emphasize the continuity of his power, had ordered that the pearls and diamonds for Eugénie's parure be taken from the treasury of France. These stones were silent witnesses to the rise and fall of previous dynasties. They remembered the touch of Marie Antoinette, sparkled in the hair of Empress Josephine, and adorned the second wife of Napoleon I, the Austrian princess Marie-Louise. Eugénie's tiara was quite literally woven from the ghosts of the past. It was with Marie-Louise that the story of this pearl collection began. Napoleon Bonaparte, obsessed with the idea of a dynasty, divorced his passionately loved but childless Josephine and married the daughter of the Austrian emperor. Marie-Louise was young, haughty, and made no secret of her disdain for her upstart husband and his court. In an attempt to win her favor, to wipe the perpetual look of sour discontent from her face, Napoleon showered her with jewels. He wanted to outdo even his first wife, Josephine, who was a recognized style icon with impeccable taste, even buying up the confiscated jewels of the executed Marie Antoinette at auctions. Thus, the first great pearl parure was created for Marie-Louise, including a tiara, a necklace of 408 pearls, combs, earrings, and bracelets. But even these mountains of pearls could not thaw the Austrian ice in her heart, and when the empire collapsed, she left France, leaving the jewels behind as if they were the burden of another's glory. They returned once more to the state treasury. And here, in a twist of fate, the new king, Louis XVIII, brother of the executed Louis XVI, gifted these very same pearls to his niece, Marie-Thérèse of France, the Duchess of Angoulême. This was the same Madame Royale, the only surviving child of Marie Antoinette and Louis XVI, a woman whose childhood was spent in a prison cell in the Temple where she lost her entire family. It is hard to imagine what she felt wearing jewelry that had once belonged to her family's enemies, the usurpers of her father's throne, and that perhaps even contained stones that had touched her mother's neck before the guillotine. But the pendulum of French history swung once more, and after another revolution, these royal jewels were dismantled, their elements hidden away in the treasury, awaiting a new ruler bold enough to lay claim to them. That ruler was Napoleon III. He ordered Lemonnier not simply to copy the old designs, but to create something entirely new, worthy of his beautiful Eugénie. The tiara was to become a symbol of the permanence and brilliance of his reign. Thus, from the fragments of fallen monarchies, a new legend was born, and Empress Eugénie accepted it with pride, unaware that the invisible threads of fate were already binding her to her predecessors. She adored this tiara. She posed in it for the great portraitist Franz Xaver Winterhalter. The best masters of the era painted her portraits in it, and she wore it to the most lavish balls at the Tuileries and to state receptions, where her beauty, enhanced by the cold radiance of pearls and diamonds, dazzled ambassadors and monarchs. The tiara became an inseparable part of her public image, a symbol of the fête impériale, the imperial celebration, as this era of unbridled luxury, grand Parisian renovations, and brilliant festivities was nicknamed. It probably never occurred to her that the stones of deposed queens and empresses might carry echoes of their unhappy fates. But the splendor of the Second Empire proved to be short-lived, and the roar of Prussian cannons at Sedan in 1870 became the death knell not only for the reign of Napoleon III, but also for the brilliant era of Empress Eugénie. The emperor was taken prisoner, and revolution erupted in Paris. An enraged mob marched on the Tuileries Palace. Eugénie was forced to flee for her life, disguised in a simple dress with the help of her American dentist. It was in this chaos, as she said farewell to her past life, that she uttered those words, refusing to take the tiara. It was not just a piece of jewelry. It was a state asset, part of the joyaux de la couronne de France, the crown jewels of France. The empress saved her life, but her precious heart remained in France, doomed to public humiliation. The new Third Republic, wishing to eradicate the very memory of monarchy and empire, made a radical decision to sell off most of the crown jewels. It was a political act meant to show that France was done with kings and emperors forever. Before the auction, in 1878, the tiara was displayed at the World's Fair in Paris, a curious relic of a fallen regime. One can only guess the pain Eugénie felt, living in exile in England and reading in the newspapers that her favorite jewel, the witness to her glory, was on public display and would soon be sold to the highest bidder. Thus began the tiara's odyssey through private collections, its journey from a symbol of state power to a luxury item for the ultra-wealthy. It was resold several times, disappearing into the safes of anonymous tycoons, until in 1890 its story took another romantic turn. Prince Albert I von Thurn und Taxis, head of one of Germany's wealthiest and noblest aristocratic families, purchased the tiara as a wedding gift for his bride, Archduchess Margaret Clementine of Austria. A wedding again, a tiara again as a symbol of love and status. The irony was that the bride was from the Habsburg dynasty, the very same one to which both Marie Antoinette and Marie Louise had belonged. The ghosts of the past converged once more in the glitter of a single jewel. For several decades, the tiara found peace in the vaults of one of Europe's most distinguished families, in their ancestral castle, St. Emmeram's Abbey in Regensburg. But its public story was far from over. In 1980, photos from the wedding of the young head of the house, Prince Johannes von Thurn und Taxis, and the vibrant, eccentric Countess Gloria von Schönberg-Glauchau circled the globe. The bride, whom the press soon dubbed the Punk Princess and Princess TNT, appeared at her wedding ceremony in this historic tiara. The contrast was striking. An ancient imperial relic created for the classical beauty of Eugénie, crowning the head of a modern, dynamic aristocrat. The tiara was once again in the spotlight, proving its timeless appeal. However, after her husband's death in 1990, the fairy tale turned into harsh reality. Prince Johannes left behind not only a vast fortune, but also a colossal inheritance tax bill, about $500 million. Princess Gloria, to save the family from ruin, was forced to make a gut-wrenching decision: to sell off part of the family treasures. In 1992, at a Sotheby's auction in Geneva, the pearl tiara of Empress Eugénie appeared once more among the lots. The world's collectors held their breath, preparing for a battle over the legendary artifact. But this time, a force far more powerful than any collector's money was present at the auction: the national pride of France. A group of patrons, united as the Society of Friends of the Louvre, decided that this relic, a witness to so many dramatic pages of French history, must return to its homeland. They raised the necessary funds and bought the tiara, outbidding all private buyers. The circle was complete. It came home, but no longer as the property of a monarch, but as a national treasure, a witness to great triumphs and devastating falls. Today, the pearl tiara of Empress Eugénie is displayed in the Galerie d'Apollon at the Louvre, alongside the other surviving treasures of the French crown. It no longer adorns the head of a beautiful empress, but its cold, pure radiance tells its story to thousands of visitors. A story of love and politics, of splendor and exile, of revolutions and auctions. The story of a jewel that saw more than any human, and which, having outlived all its owners, became an eternal symbol of a bygone era. And looking at it today, behind bulletproof glass, you cannot help but wonder, what is ownership, really? Did this tiara truly belong to any of those who wore it? Or were they, all those queens, empresses, and princesses, merely temporary custodians, granted the honor of briefly touching eternity, frozen in the sparkle of diamonds and the milky light of pearls? This incredible story is just one of many hidden away in the world's treasure vaults. If you enjoyed this journey through time, give us a like, subscribe to our channel, and be sure to share in the comments which legendary jewel's fate fascinates you the most.